Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 7, the son of Drona punished. Which is it? Did it move it up or down? It was 36 before and they put it to 35. Did you do 35 yesterday? 35 is about the Brahma Bandhus.
Yesterday was verse 34. Yeah.
Oh, so 35 today. Maina partarhasi tratum Brahma bandhum imam jahi Yosava nagasap suptan Alvidin nisha balakan Mainam partarhasi tratum Brahma bandhum imam jahi Yosava nagasa saptam sutam Abadin nishi balakan Mainam pravarhati satrum Brahma bandhum imam jahi Yosava nagasa suptan Avadin nishivalakan Mainam praharasi tratum Brahma bandhum imam jahi Yosava nagasa suptan Avadina Shivalakan. Mataji? Mainam Praharasi Dratum Brahma bandhum imam jasi Yosava nagasa suptan Avadini Shivalakan Ma'enam, never unto him. Partha, O Arjuna, Arhasi, ought to. Tratum, give release. Brahmabandhum, a relative of a Brahmana. Imam, him. Jahi, kill. Ya, he, who has. Asau, those. Anagasa, faultless. Suptan, while sleeping. Avahit, killed. Nishi, at night. Balakan, the boys. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Lord Shri Krishna said, O Arjuna, you should not show mercy by releasing this relative of a Brahmana, Brahmabandhu, for he has killed innocent boys in their sleep. Please repeat. Lord Shri Krishna said, O Arjuna, you should not show mercy by releasing this relative of a Brahmana, Brahmabandhu, for he has killed innocent boys in their sleep. Purport. The word Brahmabandhu is significant. Person who happens to take birth in the family of a Brahmana but is not qualified to be called a Brahmana is addressed as a relative of a Brahmana and not as a Brahmana. The son of a high court judge is not virtually a high court judge. But there's no harm in addressing a high court judge, his son, as a relative of the honorable justice. Therefore, as by birth, only one does not become a high court judge, so also one does not become a brahmana simply by birthright, but by acquiring the necessary qualifications of a brahmana. As the high court judge is a post for the qualified man, so also the post of a brahmana is obtainable by qualification only. The Shastras enjoin that even if good qualifications are seen in a person born in a family other than that of a brahmana, the qualified man has to be accepted as a brahmana. And similarly, if a person born in the family of a brahmana is void of brahminical qualifications, then he must be treated not as a non-brahmana, or in better terms, a relative of a brahmana. Lord Sri Krishna, the supreme authority of all religious principles, the Vedas, has personally pointed out these differences, and is about to explain the reason for this in the following slokas. Mainam praharasi tratum brahma bandhum imam jahi yo savan nagasa suptan avadin nishi balakan. Lord Sri Krishna said, O Arjuna, you should not show mercy by releasing this relative of Brahmana, Brahma Bandhu, for he has killed innocent boys in their sleep. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskyatyade Satarne. As we know, devotional service has three different phases: Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. And they're progressive. It's not possible to factually perform Abhideya without first acquiring Sambandha. And without Sambandha and Abhideya, it's not possible to actually reach Prayojana. So Sambandha means knowledge. So part of that knowledge is to be able to properly discriminate. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says, Sattvam rajas tamayiti guna prakriti sambhava nibandanti mahabaho dehe dehinam avyam. That the material nature consists of three modes, namely goodness and passion and ignorance. And when the living entity comes in contact with these modes, he becomes conditioned by them. And the mode of ignorance is different from the conditioning in the mode of passion, which is different from the conditioning in the mode of goodness. What one can do in goodness, one will not be able to do in passion or ignorance. And what one does in ignorance, one would not want to do in either passion or in goodness. Therefore Krishna says, Shatura Vanya Maya Shistam Guna Karma Vibhaga Shaha Tasya Kartram Apimam Vidya Kartram Avyam. That Chatur Vanya Maya Shistam. That the material nature and everyone has some particular occupation in the three modes of material nature. Chatur Vidam. There are three different Chatur Vanya. There are four different Varnas. According to the modes of material nature and the work prescribed to them, and the work associated with them, the four divisions of human society were created by me. And although I'm the creator of the system, you should know that I'm yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. So according to the three modes, everyone is in either one mode or a combination of the modes, then one has this particular duty. And Krishna says, Shreyan swadamo viguna paradharma sunustita Shreya dharmo nidinam shreyak paradharmo bhayavaha. That it's better to perform one's own duty, even if it's not well done, even if there's destruction, even if it's Shreyan swadamo viguna. Vigano means not well done, full of mistakes. Shreyan Swadharma Paradharma. It's a better duty just to do one's own duty than to perform someone else's duty, because to perform someone else's duty is dangerous. Destruction in the course of one's own duty is better than perform someone else's duty, because to perform someone else's duty is dangerous. Just like, for instance, here it's mentioned a high court judge, but we could take, for instance, if you were born into a family of surgeons, your father's a surgeon, your mother's a surgeon, your brother's a surgeon, and you're expected to become a surgeon, but you never study surgery. But it's a family business, so you put up a sign, heart surgeries, half price. But you're not qualified because you know nothing about heart surgery other than you were born in the family of a surgeon. So which fool would go to such a heart surgeon and ask what your qualifications are and say, my father was a great surgeon? What about you? Well, I didn't have time to study surgery. I studied finger painting in school. Would you pay half price for a heart surgery? No, because you know it would be a failure. Similarly, everyone has their duty according to the actual modes of material nature that they're situated in. To become a Brahmana requires qualification. For instance, it is said, Samadhamma tapasocham shanti arjavam evacha jnana vijnana astikyam brahma karma sabhavajam. So two of the qualifications of a Brahmana, jnana and vijnana, theoretical knowledge and realized knowledge. And the Brahmana is supposed to give other people direction. But if one is blind, and especially according to Srimad Bhagavatam, the te vidu swartakatim hi Vishnu darashaya ye bahir artamanina andaya tandero pigayamanas te pisha tantra urudami bada. If one doesn't know, if the Brahmin doesn't know that the goal of life is to reach Krishna, then he's really not qualified as a Brahmin. One should not take advice from him. He would be considered a non-devotee, a bhakta. And if he doesn't know that the goal is to reach Krishna, then he may have so much other so-called knowledge, but it's not very valuable. It's called darashaya ye bahya artamanina. It will simply deal with things external. Andaya tandira pigayamanas pisha tantra urudamiva. He's blind, and those who follow him are also blind, but they'll both get into difficulty. Blind man following another blind man will simply fall into a ditch. Therefore, one has to judge oneself as well as others according to the modes of material nature that they're situated under, or the transcendental nature, how far advanced they are in the transcendental nature, and then acquire from them properly. To go to a grocery store, Prabhupada said, to buy gold, and they give you a pound of butter and charge you 300 euros a pound, because that's the price of gold, then you'll get cheated. You have to know what's gold and where to buy it, what you're looking for. Therefore, although Ashvatthama was born in a Brahminical family, Dronacharya was his father, still he manifested his lack of Brahminical realization. First of all, as it says here in the Bhagavatam, because he was afraid of death. Even the Kshatriyas are not supposed to be afraid of death, or else they're not Kshatriyas, they're Shudras. Because the Shudras are in the Bali concept of life, but even higher than the Shudras, more or less the Vaishyas are not so much into the Bali concept of life. They're considered twice born. Twice born doesn't mean you hatch from an egg. Oh, that's also Dvija, because the birds are supposed to be Dvija. Dvija means twice born. So the birds first take birth, the mother hatches the egg, lays the eggs, so that's the first birth. And then the second birth is when the bird cracks the shell of the egg and gets out. That's why it's called Dvija. Dvija means two, twice born. Therefore, twice born doesn't mean that you're a bird and you hatch from a shell. It means you realize that I'm not this body. Twice born means you've taken shelter of a person who's in knowledge, and therefore you've come to another state of existence, taking birth out of ignorance, to come out of ignorance. Jyotir Tama, to come out of the ignorance. That's why one accepts a guide to come out of ignorance. Otherwise, one is accepting a blind guide. Their objective may be seemingly very exalted, patriotism or philanthropism, whatever it may be, but they're blind, and therefore it's considered Durashaya, an insignificant accomplishment. So similarly, here, Ashwatthama, he's learned how to throw Brahmastra. Obviously, it's not exactly an easy thing to throw Brahmastra. It's not just like throwing a tennis ball somewhere. It takes a whole years in Gurukul of austerity. Gurukul meant there was no smart computer for dumb students. Nor was there any internet. There's probably not even a Sunday feast. You didn't sleep on a comfortable bed. There was no air conditioner. You were out in the forest. You slept on the floor. And if the spiritual master didn't call you for prasadam, you'd have to fast. You couldn't sneak a little something in the refrigerator just in case. That rascal guru didn't call me today. He's probably fell asleep after eating all that cake. So, he's a rascal guru. Luckily, I hid 3 meals away in my little private refrigerator, so there's no worry whether he calls me or not. There's something to eat. No, one is actually trained in a very austere way, brahmachari guru kule vasandanta gurohitam. That one lived in the place of the Gurukul, the spiritual master of the Guru. And he didn't have a palatial building, he wasn't a king. He lived in a hut made out of bamboo and mud. Now one may think that's very primitive, but there is no electricity surging through the walls of the bamboo hut to agitate our minds. You didn't have to pay for the electricity. And when it got dark, you probably went to sleep. And when the sun rose, you could rise with the sun. You actually could see the sun. It wasn't just a theory. And you would work. You would actually use your body to do things. To walk. There was no material transportation. There's probably no even bullock's cart. You would have to walk. You have to draw water with you. You were active, and therefore there's no question of bad backs, lack of bad eyesight. You didn't eat, chocolate cookies all day. So you had all your natural teeth. You didn't have to go to the dentist. You didn't have to take supplements. It was all very natural living, and you could actually concentrate your mind on the subject. There's nothing else to do. You weren't thinking about the girl next door or the boy next door. There's nothing to think about except for the subject. The subject was more interesting than, just watching the wind blow through the trees. And they practice. Once they learned something, they'd actually practice it, and they had time to do it. There's no hurry. Didn't have a conference call they had to go to. They just practiced chanting Ah, how to pronounce Ah, the Vedic mantra, the Vedic alphabet. They'd spend 6 months sometimes in pronouncing one letter. So who's going to do it nowadays? People have no time. They need their degree in 6 months so they can get a job. Otherwise they starve to death. But there they were eating very simply, a little rice, maybe some tamarind leaves, whatever. And they concentrated their minds on learning how to properly chant Ah. And their senses were controlled. They didn't eat too much or eat too little. Dantam, danta. Brahmachari, Guru, Kule, danta, vasam. So their danta, their senses were controlled. So after some months practicing, hearing from the learned teacher, they could pronounce Ah. But when they pronounced Ah, it wasn't the way we pronounce Ah. It would actually vibrate and have a certain effect on the whole universe. Actually, sound vibration is changing everything. The sound vibration we would have heard 100 years ago is different from the sound vibrations we hear now. 100 years ago, there would be no advertisement to buy a smartphone or a computer or the internet or cars, probably, or maybe 200 years ago. But now there's sound vibrations describing those things and how to utilize them and how to make them and where to get them. So they have sound vibrations, and by chanting the sound vibration, they'd actually affect the universe to such an extent that when one became a learned Brahmin or a Brahmana, like Shringi, he could touch water and curse Pariksha Maharaj to die in 7 days from a snake bite, because he knew exactly the right sound vibration that would produce that effect. That Durvasa Muni could pluck a hair from his head and by a mantra create a fiery demon to kill Ambarish Maharaj. And what to speak of Krishna and the others on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, of course. Krishna didn't fight on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. But we find that they but sometimes it says in Nectar of Devotion that Krishna would fight, and he'd throw a water weapon, or fire weapon, say, and the other opponent would throw a water weapon and put out the fire. So that may seem extraordinary, but it was extraordinary for us. But they could actually do it. Some people can actually do it. If you know how to chant a certain vibration, you can actually break glass. So it's not like it's just entering into our ears. Or sometimes we hear a sound that's so loud, it actually hurts our ears. It gives us a headache after some time. So sound is actually more powerful than anything else, practically speaking. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. The Word was God. So everything is coming out of sound vibration. Krishna chanted, his flute entered into Brahma's ears, and it came out as Om. Therefore, in the Gurukul, one should chant the sound vibrations, the whole alphabet, and put them together for certain mantras, and the mantras would actually change the universe, would actually have an effect on the universe, would be arranged. Maybe it's because Krishna is in the heart, he knows he himself has created the universe through sound, and therefore he knows what sounds change the universe, and he gives the intelligence to those who have learned that science from others, and they could actually vibrate those sounds. But they're supposed to be utilized in certain circumstances. They're not given to just ordinary persons, generally speaking. They were given to the Kshatriyas and the Brahmanas, how to chant properly. Otherwise, they'd be destructive. They wouldn't be good for oneself or to others. Like Dronacharya had some students such as Arjuna and even Duryodhana and others, and he taught them the science of archery. But there was one Shudra came, and he saw Dronacharya teaching the art, and he decided to make a deity of Dronacharya and practice archery. Ekalavya. So he practiced day and night archery, and he became quite proficient, even in some respects better than Arjuna. But he was a Shudra. Therefore, he didn't know how to utilize properly the art. He may have learned the art, but he would misuse it. So therefore, Dronacharya asked him for some dakshin, and Akachakra said, yes, whatever dakshin you want, because you're my guru, I'll give you. He said, I want your thumb. Because if you don't have a thumb, you can't shoot as accurately. So Ekachakra, Ekalavya gave him the thumb as charity, as dakshin, and therefore he wasn't the topmost bowman in the world anymore. Dronacharya didn't do it out of meanness or out of envy. He did it because he knew Ekalavya would misuse his talent in a way which wouldn't be good for himself or anyone else. So that's the Brahmins. They learn, but they learn under the guidance of an actual Brahmin. Otherwise, we have Shukracharya. He's also a Brahmana. And he also taught the demons. But the demons are not actually auspicious. So therefore, Krishna also has the demigods to counteract the demons. The demons are good for the demigods because they keep the demigods humble, keep the demigods relying on Krishna. And the demigods are good because otherwise the demons would get out of hand and cause havoc in the universe. No one's good. Therefore, they live in a symbiotic relationship. And sometimes the demons get the upper hand, and then they rely on Krishna. So Krishna comes and he cheats the demons, or he gives the demigods special strength to overcome the demons. And then the demigods become too puffed up. They neglect Brihaspati. The demons become strong because they take shelter of Sukracharya and they become prominent. So this is the material existence. But one should know things properly so that one can act properly. If one doesn't know one's actual status and imitates a higher level, then one will certainly get into trouble and get others into trouble by pretension. Just the same way as a son of a surgeon who doesn't know surgery, who's not qualified to do surgery, takes up the post of surgery, and foolish people take advantage of him because it's cheaper, and they simply get into difficulty. So the whole world is full of imitations nowadays. Everything is an imitation, practically speaking, of the real thing, because we put on these dresses, these material bodies, to imitate Krishna and Srimati Radharani. And we're imagining that we're two-handed Narayan or two-handed goddess of fortune, whatever else we're dreaming. And therefore we're creating havoc for ourselves. Unless we take shelter of what we're supposed to actually be doing with this body, which is yajna by Vishnu. Without sacrifice for Vishnu, for Krishna, Jagnata Kamano Yatra Lokoyam Karma Bandhanai Tararpa Apikamtiya Mukta Sangha Samachara. That work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed, otherwise work binds one to the material world. Perform prescribed duties for his satisfaction, O son of Kunti, and this way you will always remain unattached and free from bondage. So one can go up the ladder of a varnashram, act dutifully as a Shudra, become a Vaishya, and act dutifully as a Vaishya and become a Kshatriya, and act dutifully as a Kshatriya and become a Brahmana. But if one decides, if one has bad association along the way, and instead of going up the ladder, one actually acts in a way which is inimical towards Krishna, doesn't follow the path of Krishna or his instructions, then the result is that one becomes a demon. A Shudra is a Shudra because he follows the Vedic culture, Vedic instructions under higher authority, or he's a Mudha. He's a fool. If you just act like a Shudra without any Krishna consciousness, without being under any higher authority, just gratifying his senses or gratifying other people's senses. And one becomes a Vaishya if he protects cows and properly takes care of the land and the animals. Or he becomes a Naradama. He has more intelligence than the Shudra. He occupies the Shudras, but in horrible works, in slaughterhouses, or technology, or this horrible technological agriculture with pesticides, insecticides, herbicides, so many horrible things that they're doing to the atmosphere and the nature. Or one may advance oneself to be a Kshatriya, but if he comes up to the platform of inquisitiveness from the Brahmins or higher authorities, but he becomes a demon, then he becomes a Maya Pritagyana. Instead of following the instructions of higher authorities, the Vedas, he actually becomes a mental speculator and decries the actual knowledge coming from the Vedas. Or one may come all the way up to the Brahmin like Ashvatthama, but if he gives up Krishna consciousness, he doesn't know what's to be done and what's not to be done, which the Brahmins are supposed to know, then he becomes an Asura Bhavam Ashritya. He becomes an Asura, not a Brahman. And here he says he becomes a Brahman Bandhu. And what he does is not good for himself. To protect his body, he's willing to destroy the whole universe by throwing a Brahmastra. Such a fool. And therefore Krishna said you should arrest him, otherwise he'll cause more trouble. And as a matter of fact, he does cause more trouble. They arrest him. Draupadi's there asking for his release, as we'll find out. Bhima wants to kill him. Yudhisthira Maharaj takes Draupadi's side. Krishna manifests 2 extra arms to keep Bhima and Yudhisthira Maharaj from getting on each other's case. And finally they just cut off his jewel, embarrass him. But he's a demon. Didn't work. Winds up throwing a Brahmastra at Uttara to kill Pariksha Maharaj. They already killed the other sons. His master Duryodhana didn't like it, fell into depression and died. And here, such a fool, Ashvatthama, he's killed the 5 sleeping sons of the Pandavas who would be the inheritors of the world. Duryodhana, his master, is displeased. He gets captured, he's going to be punished. They cut off his jewel. And he escapes. But his effulgence, his consciousness is all distorted. So he throws another Brahmastra to kill Pariksha Maharaj. What a fool. And he's still around, so watch out. He's still in the Himalayas. I don't know if that 5,000 years, if he learned anything. But I think he's destined to take some position in the future. He's a slow learner, but eventually he'll learn something. Because he just didn't understand what the duties of a real Brahmin are. He got educated, but obviously there was some defect in his association. There's some defect. After all, Dronacharya was associating with Duryodhana and company, so Ashvatthama got affected by it. And he lost his real sense, the real purpose of life. As Duryodhana was an intimate friend, an intimate cousin of Lord Krishna, but he didn't understand Krishna very well, therefore he was a demon. Nor did he follow Krishna's instructions. So similarly with Ashvatthama. But still they learn. It may take some time. Obviously he was advanced in many ways, but he had some hard lessons to learn. So I'll stop there. Any questions or comments? So the purport is that we should know what our qualifications are and act accordingly. Of course, in devotional service, we're not qualified as Brahmins nowadays. We can't light a fire by speaking a mantra. We can chant Hare Krishna and sell a book. That's the mantras that's more effective than lighting a sacrificial fire. But that is the sacrificial fire in this age. Sankirtan Yagya, chanting Hare Krishna, distributing transcendental knowledge. That's the way we can utilize our... We may not be able to say, how to light a fire, but we can light some kind of consciousness in people's in hearts. We can ignite something in their heart that will inspire them to take up Krishna consciousness. So that's the most effective mantra we have to learn. The more we learn those mantras, the more we advance, the more the world advances. But we need an organized society where people know how to, who actually have the qualities of a Shudra, which means they actually respect higher authority and willing to follow them. So that's pretty rare nowadays. Shudras are almost extinct. Everyone's become a Mudha. Or hopefully Vaishyas protect the cows, plow the land, create a mode of goodness society to live in, where the atmosphere is such as conducive to self-realization. And the Kshatriyas to follow the Brahminical advice and how to protect the whole world from being misled by lust, anger, and greed under illusion and little memory and intelligence. And Brahmins who actually know what the purpose of life is and how to achieve it for all classes of people. So that Prabhupada wanted. We have to find out where we are so we can take the next step, because there is one step after another. One is, in this age, one is not born as a Brahmin, one is born as a Shudra or less, and one has to go step by step to come to the Brahminical platform. Of course, Prabhupada said this Hare Krishna mantra is a lift. It's like taking the elevator. So one can rapidly come to a higher state of consciousness and activity. But still, one should make sure that one gets off at the right place. One gets off the lift in this first floor. The lift wasn't very helpful. You have to go up to the highest floor. Anything else? Yes.
I was thinking about when you mentioned that, Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita that it's better to do one's duty than others. And then you gave an example of a surgeon. So can you please give more examples of somebody who's not doing his duty and doing someone else's duty?
Well, like a person, he comes to the Hare Krishna movement. Well, I'll give you an example. The man was an apprentice under someone who was a veterinarian who used to take care of horses. So one day, the apprentice was with his teacher, and a horse came with a big lump in his throat. So the horse veterinarian, he took a hammer and slammed the horse's throat, and the lump went down, and the horse was cured. So the apprentice said, well, now I've learned the art of curing horses. So he went all around the country, and every time there was a horse that was brought before him, he'd smash it with a hammer in the throat and kill it. So after some time, his teacher, the veterinarian, came to him and said, what are you doing? He said, you're going around the country claiming that you're my student and killing so many horses by hitting them with a hammer. So the apprentice said, well, I watched you, I observed you very carefully, and I saw one day a horse came with a big lump in its throat, and you hit it really hard with a hammer, and the lump went down, and you cured it. So that's what I've been doing, is just following your example. And So he said, actually, you're a fool. He said, actually, the horse had swallowed a watermelon. So in this particular case, I hit it with a hammer and the watermelon got broken up and he swallowed it and cured him. He said, I know the science, but you're just imitating me, and therefore you're causing havoc. So before one should learn the science, anything it is, properly, before one starts claiming oneself to be a practitioner. Therefore, to give cheaply initiation, first or second initiation, give cheaply people some kind of service without training them, it's a hard way of doing things. And it may not work. Matter of fact, in most cases it doesn't work, because if one gets second initiation, he's not qualified, then he may imagine that he's qualified. That's like Sanatana Goswami told the jail keeper that the jail keeper, when he was captured, when he was held prisoner by the Nawab Hussain Shah, and the head of the jail was watching after him, Sanatana Goswami first praised him. He said, my dear sir, that you're a learned scholar, you know all the Quran. And you know that anyone who liberates a person, that they go to heaven. And anyone who liberates a person from their material shackles, then they also get liberated in this lifetime. So the person was a fool, didn't study anything, didn't study the Quran, and he believed Sanatana Goswami because he was praising, he was flattering him. So the jail keeper had said, all right, I'll liberate you, but you have to give me enough money. So first he flattered him. So the jail keeper thought he was actually a learned scholar, but he was a fool. He was misled by flattery. So if we get misled by external appearances of who we think we are, and don't actually act according to the actual position we're supposed to have, then the result is that we'll disappoint others and we'll be disappointed too. Anything else?
So in conclusion, somebody who wants to do something, let's say somebody wants to be a heart surgeon and he's not trained properly, but he's imitating to be. So he's doing someone else's duty imperfect, trying to do it perfectly, but it's not.
It's not his duty. He hasn't been trained for it. You don't give someone a duty unless they're trained, otherwise, like a heart surgeon or anything. If you're going to be a Brahmin, and people come to you for advice, and you give them all kinds of crazy answers, and they accept you as a Brahmin, then you'll mislead them. And they'll get into trouble, and you're listening to the same crazy advice you're giving to others. You might follow your own crazy advice. It's like you're doctors nowadays. I remember when I came from South America one time, I was going to India for some meetings, 40 years ago. So I developed some kind of, because I was traveling extensively in South America in the high Andes, and so I was getting a little sick, so I came and I had jaundice. When I arrived in England, and they told me to go to the tropical disease clinic. So when I was there, they couldn't really figure out what I had, but they said it was kind of some kind of jaundice. So I said, what should I eat? They said, oh, you can eat anything. They didn't want to kill me, but that's what they would have done. And then I went to India after a week or so. I was better. I went to India, but I was still a little sick. So there I met Hare Krišna Maharaj at that time, and he also had jaundice. So we went to the Sham Shaki in Vrindavan, who hits people. He throws water on them, and he hits them with a peacock feather. The water turns yellow and he throws it on you. And we hit the peacock feather. And in a couple of days we got cured. So he knew what he was doing. He knew much better than the doctors did. He actually had an assistant who maybe there's still is there, I don't know. But it was quite good. Thank you very much. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.